library, enrollment services, and so on. So yeah, want to just kind of let you know that as well. So talk a little bit about Zoom. You know, if you're new to Zoom, welcome. This is definitely a tool that um, all of us will be using a lot more of here in the coming months as we work on as we practice our coursework and student services and whatnot through the coming term. And so the thing I do want to let students know is with Zoom, if you go to the Zoom web page, it may offer you a pricing plan or something, but you don't need to purchase any of the Zoom options to be able to engage with your classes. So your instructors, your student services staff, they'll have the pro account that they'll be able to invite you to participate in. But it is preferable if you download the Zoom app either to your phone or your mobile computing device, laptop, desktop computer, tend to have a better situation. So panelists, I see a lot of stuff in the chat. I think you're good. This is yes, in the webinar format, only the panelists will be able to show their video just because we have so many folks on there. Those of you that are panelists, I'm sure Lisa's working on updating you. So that's how it's going to work. We do have, as I mentioned, kind of this team LTCC who is there, who is here and available. They will be trying to answer questions, either jumping online or answering questions via the Q&A function. So you'll see down at the bottom, if you're a participant, you'll see this little Q&A feature, as you can see on your screen here. And if you put a question in there, we will do our best to respond to that question. A couple things about Q&A before we move on is we have a pretty robust bit of information to share here with you. And so do know that I believe many, through feedback of questions we've received from students via email and Coyote Corner, I think we'll be able to preemptively respond to many of your questions. So we will be doing that ahead of time. And then also, so if you kind of stand by and listen, you should get answers to many of your questions. But then at the end, we'll have a Q&A opportunity where we respond to any specific questions. Again, the questions we'll try and answer today are the ones that are going to apply to 80% of you or so who are here on this virtual room. If you have a really specific question about your situation, your coursework, probably won't be, we'll do our best to respond to it via this, but probably better to meet with a counselor, reach out to the Coyote hotline, things that we'll tell you about here in the coming hour to give you some more insight. So our goal for today is really, this webinar is all focused on helping you get prepared for spring quarter. So we realize there will be additional questions as we work our way through the quarter and through the year. All the information in here is really, what do you need to be ready? What information do you need to be ready on April 6th? So we'll do our best, and then we'll do our best and then kind of go from there. And we will be sharing this slide deck. We'll post a PDF of this slide deck. We'll post a link to it in the Coyote Corner app. If you don't know what that is, you'll hear more about it throughout our time here today. The thing I want to, first off, so already have a question about virtual platform. Yep, that will be a question that will be answered today in our presentation. So we'll answer that one live. The thing, first off, thank you all of you for taking the time. Hopefully you saw this message on social media, maybe in the Coyote Corner app, maybe in your student email. So thanks for tuning in, but definitely I want to make note of your student email. We are using it much more than typically. You've been noticing you've been getting all student emails, and the reason for that is there's just so much to communicate right now. So please make sure you're logging into Passport and checking out your email and going from there. All right, the big thing I want to tell you is we're still open, right? The campus facility is closed, right? But we are still open. The services that you've come to expect are still available to you virtually. whether that's counseling, tutoring, access to the lending library. We are moving through kind of into this new virtual world, and doing our best to make sure that all those services are available for you in spring quarter, even though they'll be delivered in a different way. And I want to let you know that at the top of our list, students are our priority, and that's what we're really focused on. And I think what you'll see here is that we've put a number of things into play um, that help better serve and support our students through the upcoming spring quarter. And again, if you have questions, like I said, we'll answer a lot of these. Be sure that your questions go in the Q&A box, not the chat box, because that's where we'll respond to those. So I want to start off talking about student services and let you know what's there, and then we'll get to instruction, and then we'll kind of complete with some student resources. So starting off with student services, I want to let you know that all our typical student service departments are open and operational. Counseling, financial aid, enrollment services, different programs ranging from EOPS to Promise to Equity. They are all open and operational. Here are some kind of specific ways to contact the departments. So counseling, and again, we'll provide this slide deck, a link to it, so you'll be able to go back and get some of these numbers if you can't jot them down now. But counseling, you can reach out to them via this counselor@ltcc.edu email. They also take appointments via Cranium Cafe. You may say, what is Cranium Cafe? Great question. We're going to show you that here shortly. Enrollment services, where you typically register for a class face-to-face, submit a number of necessary forms. You could reach them via email or this phone number right now, and they will be on Cranium Cafe probably in the coming weeks. Financial aid, same thing. They have a generic email that you can reach out to, a direct number, and Cranium Cafe. So you'll see that link. This is a link that you probably want to take note of, put in your bookmarks, ltcc.craniumcafe.com. So let's take a look at Cranium Cafe and see what that entails. So basically, there's many departments that are now available for live chat, or even to set up a face-to-face, one-on-one virtual appointment. And so what you'll see is, Disability Resource Center. These are just some for examples. Academic advising and counseling. If you see, we have Regina there. You'll notice how her green dot says online. So that means she's online and available. You could engage in a live chat, or below, schedule a meeting, or even send an offline message if the person's not online. So looking over at Tracy, one of our other counselors, you'll see hers says, I'm away, I'm in a meeting right now, but you could shoot her an online message. Enrollment services, there's Amanda. You could kind of knock on her door and see if she's available, and she could respond to you with some questions. So Cranium Cafe is something that we're going to be using in our library services, in many of our different student services programs, financial aid, counseling, Disability Resource Center, enrollment services, so on and so forth. So definitely bookmark that page and make a note of it. We have a short video here that actually shows you how to set up a counseling appointment via Cranium Cafe. Maybe you have some questions. So one of the questions in the Q&A box is, what about my canceled courses? Will those be reoffered? It's a great question. And maybe you have questions about setting up your schedule or revising your schedule. Go ahead, go into Cranium Cafe, go to our virtual campus website, and this video, let's take a look. It'll show us what to do here.
Okay, so when you get to our website, ltcc.edu, you'll see that there is a new link called Virtual Campus. When you click on Virtual Campus, there'll be a number of supports over here. For students, go ahead and click on Student Support, and there's a number of different resources on here. Definitely check out, find us in counseling. You're going to go right here, Counseling Help. Please make an appointment online. That's going to take you to all of our counseling cards. You'll see there's multiple counselors available, and all you have to do is you click on this live chat button, agree to the terms, and then you're going to log in either with your Passport login, or you can log in here too through new students. And then I'll show you what the chat version looks like. Hi Regina, can we chat live? And this is where you can come in and you'll be able to chat with her, you'll be able to see her, and she'll be able to share her screen with you, and come check out Cranium Cafe.
All right, so that's a little tutorial. The main thing I want you to take away from this is if you go to ltcc.edu/virtual campus, that's where you get the link to all these various resources in addition to access them, and even some tutorials under the student resources on how to access some of these things. So counseling will be taking place via Cranium Cafe. The next thing I want to share with you is, financial aid. I know that's a concern for students. It's open for business. It's operating as usual. There's a number of ways to access financial aid. We shared with you previously the direct email. They also have a direct phone number, and then they are available via Cranium Cafe. So here you can see America, one of our financial aid technicians. You can knock on her door and ask a question about your financial aid. So finally, if you have a question and it's not specific to financial aid or counseling or enrollment services, but you just have a general question of like, where do I get access to this? We've set up and are now operating as of this Monday, this new Coyote hotline. And so basically, if you know it's about counseling, go straight to counselors. If you know it's about registration, go straight to enrollment services. But if it's a question about, when's the bookstore open, or how do I get access to this, or if it's maybe a question that you don't have, if you don't know who to direct it to, go ahead and call this Coyote hotline. They're currently operational Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 p.m. And they'll do their best to either answer your question or at least take your information and get it to somebody on campus that has the answer and they can get back to you via phone or email with that answer. So again, if it's program specific, if it's related to Promise, call Promise. If it's related to counseling, do a counseling appointment. But if it's just a general question, go to this Coyote hotline. The other thing is we've moved a lot of our student forms online, and they're now all form fill, meaning that you could complete them digitally. And so these are the type of forms that I know students typically have a need to do, whether it's a add drop, waitlist form, maybe a schedule conflict waiver. These are all available. We've made a simple link of ltcc.edu/forms. And you could download the form there. And maybe you don't know what the form is that you're looking for, but you're thinking, I know I need to do this. What's the right form? Just go ahead and send an email to enrollment services at ltcc.edu, and they'll send you the appropriate form and assist you with that. Also, we realize that you may not have the ability to sign the form on your computer or scanner or stuff like that. So as long as you send the form from your LTCC email, and that's really important, using your LTCC email, not your Yahoo or Gmail or whatever else. Use your LTCC email, and then that email could act as your signature as long as it comes from your LTCC student email. So know that that's available to you. And again, those student forms, check them out. And we'll speak more to that as we go. Want to let you know about some deadlines. Hopefully you've seen the notes on this already. We pushed back the scholarships due date by a month to May 1st to give folks more time. We also pushed back the tuition due date by 2 weeks. So this was originally due 2 weeks ago. Education code, which is what kind of governs our actions, allows us to push it all the way back up to the business day before the start of the quarter. So the furthest day we're able to push it back to is April 3rd. So that's been pushed back, but maybe on April 3rd, you're concerned, hey, I can't make my full tuition payment. What could I do? We have payment plans available. And let me tell you a little bit more about those. So you want to reach out. To our bursar technician, Vanessa. Vanessa's very great to work with. She's an LTCC student alum, so she understands what it's like to be a student here. And you can email her directly at this email. You can give her a call, and she'll work with you to create a plan that works for you, your start date and your end date, how often you make payments. Maybe you're paid every other week, so that's how you want to make payments. Maybe it's monthly. She'll work with you. There's no down payment required, no late fees, no installment fees. So really, if cash flow is a challenge for you, as it is for many of us, especially during this challenging time, please take advantage of that. What we want to do is encourage you to stay enrolled, keep making progress towards your educational goal, keep making progress to your career goals, and know that we're here to help you. To that note, one concern that I've heard from students is like, hey, yeah, I'm fine now. It's April 6th. I'm healthy. My family's healthy. I'm planning on taking my classes this spring, but I'm afraid if I take my classes and what if I get sick or somebody in my immediate family that I need to care for gets sick due to coronavirus? What will happen? I don't want it to negatively impact my GPA. And so what I want to let you know now is that there are flexible withdrawal dates that we've gotten approval from the kind of the statewide body that controls community colleges for what's called a late extenuating withdrawal option. And so if you have to withdraw midterm due to you or somebody in your immediate family being impacted by COVID-19, you could do that with a full refund and without it impacting academic probation or negatively impacting your GPA. And so what I want to tell you is if you're in a good place right now to enroll and go take your classes and that's what you want to do, go for it. And do know if, unfortunately, you do have something related to coronavirus that impacts you or your immediate family, you will be able to apply for these extenuating withdrawal options, and it won't impact you negatively academically. You'll get a full refund. And before you do that, we'll advise you if you're a financial aid student to talk to financial aid and see how it may impact your financial aid, because of course the number of units that you take does impact your financial aid. But just know that there's greater flexibility for students right now during this crisis than ever before. So those are the student service type functions that are available. Again, some of the big takeaways are those key department contacts, and also that use of Cranium Cafe. If one of the panelists could put the Cranium Cafe link in the chat, I think that would be really helpful for folks. Get that Cranium Cafe, put it in your bookmark, and know that's where you're going to get a lot of resources. So now we're going to talk about instruction and thank you, instruction and course offerings. And the biggest question I've been getting is, what does spring quarter look like? And that's what we're here to try and answer for you today. And again, thank you to the first attendee who asked a question about, how will these virtual platforms work that have a lab? And we're going to answer that here today, and hopefully it'll sufficiently answer your question. So the first thing I want to say is, don't assume your classes are canceled, right? Because I think a lot of folks think, well, I have a science lab, it must be canceled, or I have an art class, it must be canceled. And in many cases, and actually the vast, vast majority of cases, we found that we're able to offer these courses virtually. And so let's talk a little bit about what we're doing, and let's move on to our next slide here. And so anything that was in the schedule for spring quarter that was called a face-to-face class is now moving to what's referred to as enhanced virtual education. And so enhanced virtual education, I'll tell you a little bit more about in a bit, but it's really trying to replicate your face-to-face experience as much as possible. And this includes things like science labs, also includes arts. We even have some of our physical education and wilderness education courses offered through advanced virtual education. They're not going to be face-to-face, but offered through this advanced virtual education. There will be no face-to-face classes during our spring quarter. Now, if you signed up for a distance ed class, a traditional distance ed class that's asynchronous, meaning that there's no scheduled class meetings, it's kind of complete at your own time frame, those will remain the same. So nothing's changed in that regard. If you're a D student and you like to take D classes, those will remain the same. But if you are signed up in a face-to-face class, it's going to transition to what we're calling EVE. So let me kind of move on and tell you a little bit more about this enhanced virtual education. So the idea is, and I'll tell you a couple of components of it. The idea is that it replicates what you experience in a face-to-face class, although not perfectly, right? And not the same, because obviously this is different than me and you having a conversation face-to-face here. But it will have more class meetings within your scheduled class time within that face-to-face time. Not every face-to-face day and time, but more class meetings via Zoom and tools like this. There will be less of working on your own, more working potentially with a group, high social presence of your instructor. and using some more just kind of whether it's student breakout groups or discussion boards, things that more replicate your typical face-to-face experience. And so let's kind of break it down as we think about enhanced virtual education. The definition of the word virtual is this idea of almost or nearly as described, but not completely according to the strict definition. So it's not going to be the same, right? It won't be the same as face-to-face, but it's intended to be similar. Same, and then enhanced is really about how do we improve the quality or value of by doing it virtually. And let me give you some questions. And there's a question. Let me give you some examples here more specifically. So the first one, the biggest question we received is, what about science labs? And so we're pleased to announce that we now have this new tool called Labster, and we're going to give you a brief preview of it here in a minute that will allow you to complete your science labs in a virtual environment. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So again, that's just a quick visual, gives you a sense of what that entails. But as you can see, things are going to be done differently as we move through this year, or excuse me, through the spring quarter. Also, kind of moving on, some other new classes. So things like our 2D art classes, such as painting, will be done in enhanced virtual education via a Zoom environment. So you'll still be able to see your instructor and get that direct instruction, but it'll be done via Zoom. Online yoga classes. So you may have seen some of this with your own personal gyms or social media, but we will have some of these individual PE courses, available via enhanced virtual education. At this time, pretty much it looks like any of the team sports, so anything like a soccer, anything that requires a team sport, will be canceled because there's not an easy way to replicate that, other than it looks like we will have an enhanced virtual education volleyball course offered for spring quarter. So gives you a sense of that. Moving on, a couple more examples. Some of our culinary classes will be taking place via this enhanced virtual education, again, using a Zoom environment such as this. There's a note in the app, in the chat box here that shows you some of the culinary classes that will be taking place this spring. So if you are a student in hospitality or culinary or interested in culinary arts, do know those courses will be available to you. And again, I think the main thing I want to let you know, is that don't assume classes are canceled. Do know that the vast majority of classes are moving to this enhanced virtual education that were previously face-to-face. And just want to encourage you, if you have any questions, call the Coyote hotline. Go ahead and reach out to a counselor. And again, the question about classes that have a lab, I think that's been pretty well answered. Some of the emergency responder stuff will be specific to doing lectures now and then offering the hands-on portion at a later date. And there's a note in the chat there from the dean over the area that gives you that gives you the answer to that. So where can we see which classes are actually being canceled? That's a great question. Michelle Risden, are you able to respond to that?
Yeah, we'll be updating. We're making decisions really by tomorrow, and we'll be updating both the PDF of the online spring schedule and the online schedule where you go to register, so you can check those for updates regularly. And I'll just say, maybe as an added note, we are really making an effort not to cancel very many classes this term, to provide opportunities for students if you need to find classes at a later date this week sometime. please check the schedule. We're trying to leave a lot of classes open. Some of them might be smaller, but we want to give you as many opportunities as possible to complete your goals, your educational goals.
Great. And also just do know that if you go to ltcc.edu/schedule, there's a streamlined spring only schedule PDF that is being updated regularly. So if you look through that, it's not exactly in real time, but it'll give you a good sense of what's on the docket for being answered. Also, there was a question about these forums and trainings. So yes, this went out to students via their student email. I believe last Friday there was an email that was sent out to all students inviting them to this forum. And then also we've been, as I've said, putting notices on Coyote Corner and our different social media. So that's how we're trying to notify students. And of course, if you go to our homepage on the main page, it gives you a lot of information and directs you to this virtual campus. So hopefully that answers your question. Thank you for raising it. If it doesn't, go ahead and clarify. All right, moving on. Also, office hours. I know students really depend on access to their faculty members during office hours. And so just know that your faculty member via their syllabus, via their first week of class will describe to you the best way, the way that they'll be conducting office hours. But there is opportunity, those via Canvas, different chat functions. A lot of faculty will be using Zoom like this for either drop-in for like kind of group office hours or one-on-one Zoom meetings, or maybe something else that's specific to that faculty member in that class. So we do have faculty really committing to being available to students because we know that that is a concern. Okay, moving on. Also tutoring, and I'm going to hand this off to Melanie Chu, who's our Director of Library and Learning Services, is just going to tell you the plan for tutoring.
Hi, everyone. Tutoring and library services will still be available. We are operating through Cranium Cafe, and some of our tutors will be using Pisces whiteboard as well, if you're used to using a whiteboard in tutoring. And that same link that we shared in the chat earlier and in the slides, that ltcc.craniumcafe.com, is a great way to reach whoever in the library is on. So you can log in already and see some of your favorite math and writing tutors. And librarians will be available to meet with you for research help as well through this platform.
Great, thank you, Melanie. So we know that it's challenging anytime you have to change your learning modality, and I think all of us, I know many of you are dealing with, maybe your employer closed, switching to virtual. So we realize you have a number of challenges, and we're going to continue to keep our resources and especially our tutoring available to you. So please check this out. Go to the library page, go to Cranium Cafe, and encourage you to really start with the tutor early in the term when you have questions, and allow them to help support you. So I want to talk about some resources for students. So now we've kind of talked a little bit about what student services are available, and then also what's happening instructionally. I want to tell you that we actually have many of the resources that we've had available in the past, such as the lending library and the food pantry, remain available, but also want to let you know that we have a number of other options that are going to be new this term that will be available for you. So let me go ahead and tell you about that. So the first thing, again, everything starts with Virtual Campus. This is a new section on our webpage. Check it out. Scroll around, and you can go specifically to the student support section and see what's there. And do know that we're updating information to that literally on a daily basis. And so you could go there for information. One other thing I would just share is this meeting is being recorded, and so it will be made available. We'll probably put a link on the virtual campus as well as Coyote Corner app. So that way, if you have questions or you could reference back to this, or if you have peers that missed it, you could go ahead and share with them that the recording will be available. The other thing you want to do in preparation for spring quarter is there's some apps you want to download, and these are going to really help you be more effective So the three of them are Canvas, the Zoom app, and then Coyote Corner. As I've said before, Zoom you could download on your computer and or your smartphone. There's no cost to the app, and you don't need to sign up for any Zoom account to use it for LTCC purposes. The Coyote Corner app, again, that's specific to LTCC students. You need to register with your ltcc.edu email, but that is really where we're putting a lot of new and updated information. The link to download it is there, ltcc.campusapp.com. One of the panelists will put that in the chat too, so that's available for you as well. And then kind of moving on, I also want to let you know that a recent past student, current alum, Belen Garza, she's actually working in the president's office right now, and her primary focus is just monitoring Coyote Corner and being available to answer your questions, or if there's questions that or concerns that students bring up, she's sharing those with me and just making sure that those of us in the president's office have your concerns and feedback, but also any decisions that are made at the president's office level that are related to students, getting those answers into Coyote Corner as soon as possible. So like I said, if you haven't downloaded that app, do so. If you haven't logged in for a while, check it out. There's good and important information there. So what are some of the resources we have available that we're going to be getting to students? So as in any term, we have calculators available for students. We also have our lending library of textbooks and food pantry. In this term, the college purchased Chromebooks for students who do not have a personal computing device to support their academic needs. We've purchased a number of Chromebooks. Let's say you typically are used to going into the library or one of the computer labs to do all your work. Instead, you'll be able to check out that Chromebook for the term. And so we do have a plan to get these to students. So kind of moving on here, let me tell you a little bit more about where that's available. So starting tomorrow, we will have a pickup area in the library vestibule. So really through this one access doors, looking at it in this direction that's shown here in the photo. But it's not something that you just show up at, you notice the pickup hours says the primary pickup hours are 10 to 3. You don't just show up at 10 o'clock and say, here's what I need. Instead, you'll have already done your requests maybe through the lending library process or through the food pantry process, and we'll talk more about those as we go. And then you'll be contacted by somebody at LTCC. And once they tell you your item is ready, then you'll come in the following day or later that day and pick it up. And the reason for that is if you just show up, they won't be able to support you in that moment, and they'll have to turn you away. And again, we want to, we want to all be practicing social distancing. They'll have lines out that are more than 6 feet apart. So when you kind of line up, you're keeping appropriate spacing. So we don't want any of you to kind of waste a trip to campus to come get something that's not waiting for you. So we'll talk a little bit more in the next couple slides on how to request these items. But you'll request them and then you'll get notified by LTCC. And then once you're notified, you come in and pick it up. I also want to say, kind of bear with us. Tomorrow will be our first day doing this, and we'll be doing our best, and we'll probably be evolving and improving this over the next, over the coming weeks. So pickup hours, will be Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We've also had a special time frame of 8:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. And this is specifically just for high-risk groups. So this is somebody who's maybe, over the age of 65. Maybe there's somebody who has somebody living in their immediate household that's a high-risk family member, or they have immune deficiency. So just kind of like the grocery stores have made certain times available for these high-risk groups, we're doing the same. And so your pickup time will be in that shorter window where there's less likelihood of greater contact with more members of the community. So that's the pickup location. There was a question about calculators. Yes. So stuff from last quarter, we'll get to that. There's a direct answer. You could also, if you go to the Q&A, you could go to the answered questions and you can see where the answers are. but we'll get to that here shortly. So technology needs, we do have available a limited number of Chromebooks that will be available to students starting this week. These are to be checked out for the duration of the spring term. And basically, again, you can't just show up and say, hey, I need a Chromebook. Basically, students need a referral from either a counselor, so you met with a counselor, your faculty member, or one of the student support programs. Maybe you're in Equity or Promise or EOPS, or you've spoken with somebody in the library. So that's the first step, and they will refer you and place you on a list. And then once it's available to you, you'll be contacted by LTCC when the laptop is ready. And the same thing, you'll come inside that library vestibule, assuming between the 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. hour, and go ahead and get that at that time. A couple things I want to just go back because I want to respond to a couple of the questions that were floating out there. There was, one question about, students being concerned about not having an email. All students should be automatically assigned an email on at the beginning of their registration, although it's possible they had set it up to forward to their personal email. If you're having problems logging into your Passport account email, you could just you could send an email from any email to enrollmentservices@ltcc.edu, and they will be able to support you for that. So do know that. And yes, the Coyote hotline, just to confirm, there's a direct Coyote hotline number, which is 530-542-8812. Why don't we put that direct hotline number with a note to all our attendees in the chat, if we can, please. And there's a question about how do we return rented books from the bookstore? Great question. We are getting to books shortly. It's a couple slides ahead, so hang out and we'll get there. Also, for technology needs, we know that many of you count on campus internet to access access your coursework. So there are a number of resources on the virtual campus webpage. I'm spotlighting a couple of them here. Both Charter's doing a free internet for 60 days. Xfinity's doing these free hotspots. There also is free software available for the Microsoft Suite, up to 5 devices for students right now. So there are a number of business partners that are making resources available to students. I won't get in every specific right here, but just encourage you to go to that ltcc.edu/virtual campus page, and you could get get more information then. Also, the food pantry, I want to let you know that the food pantry will be open and operational in spring quarter. Now it's going to look different. You won't actually go up inside the building, right, because the campus is closed. But what you need to do is just apply now. Go to ltcc.edu/food pantry. If you're already somebody who uses a food pantry and you're in touch with Laura and the Equity team, they'll be continuing to work with you. But they'll be doing scheduled pickups at the library zone, just the same as where you come to pick up your Chromebook. That same photo of the entrance, we can maybe show that again real quick. That same pickup area is where you'll go for this. But again, you don't just show up and say, hey, I'm looking for my food pantry. Once you've worked with a team up in Equity and they've said your item is available for pickup today, or your item is available for pickup tomorrow, then you go to this area. So let's get to books, because it seems, how do we donate to the food pantry now is a question. That's a great question. I don't have the answer to that. What I do know is that the food pantry does take financial donations through LTCC Foundation. So you could go to the Lake Tahoe Community College Foundation page, and they have a PayPal payment, and you could restrict your gift for the food pantry. And right now, one of the things we're doing for a lot of students is giving them gift cards, because those are Safeway gift cards, for instance, because it's a little easier to manage the distribution of. But I'll note that question and see if there are items for donating to the food pantry, hard good items. So now to books. Let's talk about books. I know there's a lot of questions here. We'll start off with Barnes & Noble. So first off, actually, let's go, if we could go 2 slides up, let's talk about returns first. So the first thing, the good news is there's no late fees for Barnes & Noble. I've waived any of the late fees with your winter quarter books return. Starting starting tomorrow, you could bring them to the library vestibule and just return them. You'll just have to be very clear that it's a Barnes and Noble return, not a lending library return. But you also, if you don't want to come into campus, you can mail your books back for free. There's a direct link at this bit.ly link, bit.ly.ltcc book return. Again, we'll put that in the chat so that's available to you. And you can actually print out a free return label from there and it'll mail back in. So that's how you return Barnes & Noble's books. I want to differentiate anything that was a lending library book. The 24/7 book drop that you see the picture of there in the bottom left corner near the ascending sculpture is still open and available 24/7. So if you have a lending library book, go ahead and use it there. So that's the question in terms of returning books. Let's go ahead and go back up 2 slides. Let's talk about next term. So the bookstore is going to be open and operational. You could just go to ltcc.edu/bookstore and have your books shipped directly to you for free. So that's probably the most convenient and easy way to do it. You could also order online and select pickup at LTCC. And then again, you'll get notified when it's ready and it'll be available for you at that Aspen Room location. And so that's good, especially if you have a very, timely need for that book. And yes, one of the questions is, are you able to use some of your gift cards? So yes, if you're an EOPS student, you could use your Barnes & Noble book card. You'll get some specific direction on that. If you're Lake Tahoe College Promise, you could select the financial aid payment option. So those of you that are in some of our student support programs will be able to use those. We have a couple screenshots here that give you a sense of what it'll look like, but you'll kind of go through there how to pay for it. And if you see Barnes & Noble gift card as one option, you could click on that. If you're EOPS, if you're Promise, you could click on that financial aid option as well. So kind of moving on, I'm going to go ahead and now hand it back off to our Director of Library and Learning Services, Melanie Chu, to talk to you a little bit more about getting what you need.
Yes, our quarterly lending library is available. So that means the textbooks and calculators. The request process is the same as before. You go to that bit.ly/LTCC textbook request. And as with all other things, we'll contact you when it's available for pickup. So we are trying to keep our staff and students safe, and we'll give you a heads up when it's ready so that you can pick up during those times and on a specific day. You can return the previous quarter's materials to the book drop, just as Jeff said, and you can also request books from our library collection. So let's say you're working on research this quarter and you need some books that are physically here in the library. We have a process to request those. It's on our library homepage, and we'll get that book to you. It'll be ready for pickup in that same vestibule. Next slide. Yes, and because of widespread closures of college campuses, some of the ebook companies are providing free online textbooks. Not all the books are free, but there's quite a lot that's been made available. There are 2 sources to access that. What you're seeing on the screen is Vital Source, and there's also something called Red Shelf. These are on the library homepage. They're also in the virtual campus page under student resources. And you create an account, you can search for the textbooks, and you can have up to 7 books checked out at the same time. Next slide. Oh, okay. Happy to answer any questions about the quarterly lending process.
So if you have any questions about the quarterly lending library process, please put those questions in the Q&A and we'll respond to those. We actually just have 2 more slides and then we're going to start just going fully to Q&A. One question that we received is what's going to happen with graduation? And, just frankly, right now we don't know. the end of June is so far away from us, and it's hard to have a crystal ball to the future. So we will reevaluate by mid-May is when we'll be looking to make a decision. So there's plenty of notice for students to kind of plan ahead. But it's our commitment to find a way to celebrate our graduates one way or another, even if it's some sort of virtual ceremony or something of the sort. So stand by on that. But we know this is, a lot of you have worked very hard to get to this moment, and it's a special opportunity. And we will be looking forward to a way to recognize you, and we will benefit because some of the other colleges will have graduations before us, and we'll be able to look and see what some of them are doing and what we can learn from it. So now we're to the Q&A section. And so there was a question about culinary class.
Jeff, you're muted.
Thank you. There was a question about culinary classes. I'm going to hand it off to Dean Brad Deeds, who is over the culinary department, and he'll respond to those based on the information we have today.
Hi all, it's in, I actually typed the answer into the Q&A. What we're working on right now for culinary, for any of you who might be into taking one of these classes, and again, the 3 courses we're going to be offering are Culinary 172F, Food and Cooking in China, starts in 2 weeks from tomorrow. Culinary 128, Wines of California, and 166, Summer Foods. We're working on a checkout system. It would be similar to the science lab kits that students will be able to check out for those courses. And that could include pots, pans, and what you need. We're also looking at either including kind of the materials fee is what typically covers the food and the foodstuffs that you need. So we could look to include those in the checkout materials, or if an individual says, hey, I just want to purchase those on my own, then we can work on waiving the materials fee. We're going to try to be flexible on this, and we think it's going to be really exciting. I've talked to a couple other colleges across California, and you got to make lemonade out of lemons, and let's try it. A lot of you are too young to remember Julia Childs, but I know you. Not a lot of you see Iron Chef and Top Chef and all that kind of stuff. So let's try it. I think it'll be fun. So if you're interested in taking one of those classes, jump in.
And thank you, Brad. And just to build on what Brad was sharing, for some of our science labs, there will be checking out of supplies for you to kind of take home. So it won't be 100% done virtually. You still will be doing some hands-on experiments, obviously with stuff that would be suitable to have in your home, probably, you know, more on the baking soda side, those kind of things. So you could expect that as well. And more information, really, the first week of classes, just know your faculty members are working really hard, you know, right now, or their spring break, to be prepared for this new approach to education. And so a lot of those answers are still being developed. But that first week of class, you'll get a better sense of, you know, what it's going to look like. So I would encourage you, you know, stick with us, stay interested, engage in that first week of class, and see if it's going to be able to work for you. One of the other questions was, are there plans to move any of the classes that are canceled this quarter to over summer? It's a great question. Unfortunately, it's one we just don't know the answer to yet. You know, many colleges are scheduling their summer quarters already, summer terms already, as all, you know, online and not doing face-to-face because there's so much uncertainty. So if a class was canceled due to the fact it can only be held face-to-face, that will have to be one of the considerations. But we're definitely looking at that, trying to get classes back on track to make sure students can still making progress, you know, toward their educational goals. So that will definitely be one of our considerations of potentially moving some of the classes this summer, or classes that were canceled this spring, offering them again in fall. But the specifics of that have just not been decided as we wait to see how the world evolves over the coming weeks and months. So there's a question about adding or dropping classes. Steve Barry, not to put you on the spot, but do you mind taking a stab at that one?
Yeah, I don't see the question, Jeff. Can you read it to me, and I can certainly answer it. You're muted.
How would I add or drop a class? You know, so maybe the student forums, and you could talk about using your student email for communication.
Yep, definitely. You can use your student email, email enrollment services at LTCC. But all of our forms are on our forms website underneath admissions. You can also do it with your passport. That's going to be the easiest way. Log on to your passport account. You can add or drop classes. I would try that first. If you have any issues, certainly give us a call or email us. We'll walk you through the
Great.
process.
Thank you, Steve. And Melanie, I see you put the answer in the chat. Would you mind answering just the question about quarterly textbooks and renewing of other library books, just for everyone to?
Yeah, so quarterly textbooks are not available for renewal. If you have ones from last quarter, please go ahead and drop them off at the Dropbox and submit your request for spring. Regular library books can be renewed, and you can do that online on the library's homepage, or you can just shoot the library an email with your name and student ID. I also answered a question about how do I know if my class requires a textbook. The bookstore's website, and I put the link in the answered questions in the Q&A. You can check the bookstore's website for your class, name and section, and as long as your instructor has selected a textbook, that information will be there. And if it says course materials pending, then you'll want to reach out to your instructor to find out what's needed. And again, as soon as you know what you need, you can request them through the library. And calculators can also be put in the Dropbox. The Dropbox lowers very slowly, so it's safe to return calculators there. And just to let everyone know, we are handling materials carefully. We are sanitizing calculators and Chromebooks, and books are also being wiped down on the covers and then quarantined for a bit of time to make sure the pages are safe.
Okay, just kind of looking through. So a question about, is there a system in place yet for proctoring exams, or it will be on a class-by-class basis? I bet it's kind of a combination of two answers there. I don't know, Melanie or Michelle, if either of you are prepared to respond to that.
I'll respond to that, Jeff. I'd also like to answer the question about the challenge exams. So we are working with specifically some of the proctored exams that typically occur on campus tend to be in the math department. So we've been meeting with the math department and working with them on some possible solutions. We probably will be taking it class by class. So be sure to reach out to your faculty member, talk to them at the beginning of the term about what might be needed. But we are trying to create some options for to replace proctored exams, because we just don't know that we can guarantee that students at a distance will be able to find a proctoring center or that we will be able to proctor exams on campus. So we're trying to look into some virtual options there. And in terms of answering the question about the challenge exams, at this point, we are prioritizing challenge exams for students who are either trying to complete a degree or certificate this spring, or trying to transfer on and need that, that challenge exam, the units or the prerequisite covered by the challenge exam to complete or move on. So if you have a question about that, please contact the counseling staff or the instruction office, and we can guide you through that process. The reason that we're limiting it is that we are going to be offering the challenge exams through an oral process. So it will be an oral exam, and we just want to make sure that we're really providing that to students who need that immediately. We plan to offer the challenge exams again in the future in a written way.
Thank you, Michelle. There was a question about accessing Christie if you're a promise student. Yes, that will be through Cranium Cafe. And I'm not sure if we could bring that slide back up again, just to show the link to Cranium Cafe for everyone to kind of follow along. So that will be will be the tool for your counseling appointments as you look to this spring. And then also, Tim, if I could put you on the spot, I know you answered a couple questions here via the answers. You just kind of remind folks on what an ambassador could help them with and how to reach out to you.
Yeah, definitely. So the ambassador team's pretty much here to help you guys out during any hard times. We're like resource centers on campus and through this virtual world. So if you guys have any questions about finding faculty or getting referred out to financial aid or anything of that nature, we can assist you and help you get the guidance that you need. We answer questions about Canvas all the time, so we can help you navigate through that. And we're also learning through this whole process as well. So any new information that comes in, we're marking it down and knowing what to do. So yeah.
Thank you. All right, additional questions. Okay, I got a thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Other questions? Let me see, Tim put the link to the ambassador email in the chat there. Again, a couple things that we'll do after this is this slide deck, we'll post a PDF of it. And then also we will, how do we make sure this, that's a great question. We'll post a PDF of this and then also the link. So how do we make sure this counts as a credit for the Promise event? So that's a great question. I know there's some Promise folks out there. We will have a list of all the participants that we'll be providing to the folks at Promise. And I don't know if over at Promise, if you have anything else that you need from your standpoint to have it count. Just can't contact Julie Booth for any concerns and she'll help you out. That's what she says. So yeah, thank you for the Promise students. That this is hopefully a good use of your time and a good event for you to kind of get informed for spring quarter. Any other questions or even just concerns or anything that you'd like to know more about before we start to wrap this up? I'll just remind you that, you know, encourage you could kind of scroll through the chat of the things that went to all the attendees, and a lot of the important phone numbers and emails and links and whatnot are listed there. And then also if you go to the Q&A, if you click on the answered button, a couple of those had written answers. I think we've reiterated most of those here, but those are also as well. Oh, I see one question. Oh, thanks for your help. Thank you for tuning in. All right, good. Well, I'm seeing, we're going to hang out here for a bit. We'll let folks, you know, kind of come up with a question. But it seems like we're kind of winding down here on questions, no open questions. Thank you for the thank yous, and thank you to all of you for tuning in. Kind of right after this, our next move in the coming hours will be to post a link to this webinar and then also post a PDF of this slide deck. So that should be available very shortly. And when we do, we'll get a message in the Coyote Corner app so you know to go look for it.
All right, thanks everybody. I see a lot of people logging off. Thanks. We'll see you all virtually next week.
Yeah,
See you,
thank you,
Zoom.
everybody. Thanks.